whenever.
Do you feel that standardized testing are reliable measure of students' performance? Why or why not?
I think that standardized testing can be a reliable measure, but it isn't always. There are students that are able to work hard in classes, that are able to make up with a lot of effort for some of the shortcomings that they find in a high-stakes, timed test. That they may not be able to have the time to be able to think through, go back, recheck as many times as they would in a regular classroom setting. So their actual knowledge may not, and understanding may not be as reflected based on the time component, whereas their understanding level, just because of the processing speed, they may actually know more than what they're able to share on the standardized test.
And do you feel that standardized tests are fair to students who speak English as a second language?
Depends on how well they speak the second language. If you're fluent in both and you happen to, English is your second language, but you've been speaking it for years and years, then the answer would probably be yes. If the expectation is that you're going to take a standardized test in English after only being exposed to the language for a year or two, then I think that that's a challenge that would be very difficult to overcome.
Are standardized tests fair to students with special needs?
Again, I would say it depends on the student and depends on the accommodations that they need. Some students with special needs are able to get accommodations for standardized tests that allow them to achieve and demonstrate their understanding at a very high level. And the College Board and other standardized testing organizations work hard to make that available. Some students, just the way that their need may lay out there, it may always be a disadvantage, but that's, it really is a case-by-case basis.
It's been said that standardized testing is only measured like a small portion of what is taught during school. Do you agree with that?
Historically, the SAT, which is kind of the benchmark for standardized tests, is an approximation of potential for success. Really, nobody can measure for sure whether you're going to be successful, because we can't quantify exactly the level of desire that is inside the individual student. And every year we have students that come and say, I want to push myself to take this next course, and they may not meet prerequisites, they may not have all those pieces on paper that say that they should be successful, but because of their inherent drive and desire to be successful, they do whatever it takes. And that's the hard part. That's what really a standardized test really can't approximate.
What is your opinion on teaching to the test? Does teaching to the test replace good teaching practices with mechanical and repetitive learning?
Unfortunately, teaching to the test, I think, gets a bad rap. I think if you are in a classroom and you're delivering good instruction, you've started with an objective, you've designed your lesson in order to help students meet that objective, and then hopefully you're assessing, if you're doing it right, you're assessing whether or not your students have met that objective. That is teaching to the test. You start with that assessment and you design backwards to make sure that your instruction gets your students there. So from that standpoint, that's just good instruction. The second half of that question, though, about repetitive practices, that is tough, because unfortunately you get in districts a lot of times this pressure for kids to be successful, and so they run students through the same things over and over. That teaching to the test, that's not a great practice, but overall, from an instructional standpoint, starting with the assessment, starting with the test is good practice, and then it's understanding by design. It's back mapping from there so that you're preparing kids well.
Has our school been forced to narrow the curriculum in order to focus mainly on math and reading?
I just spent the weekend at the Living Arts. I think the answer to that is no. For 40 years, we've been celebrating the artistic and creative outlet of our students here. And what a tremendous weekend to be able to celebrate that and to see all of the skills the students here at West can display, from woodworking to photography to painting to ceramics. It was truly a fantastic weekend.
Do you find that instruction time is being consumed by the test preparation? How much time does Downtown West focus on standardized test preparation?
At the end of the day, we owe it to the students of West to make sure that we've done everything we can do to prepare them. I've gone around talked to students about the Keystone exams and told them that we really have taken it as a point of pride that they should not be surprised by anything that is on the Keystone exams. Students should not come out of the SAT being surprised. Their ACT, their subject area tests, AP tests. If we're doing our job on a daily basis, the students really should feel that they are well prepared. From that end, a lot of what we do is embedded in our curriculum. It's not layered on, so I feel like our curriculum really enhances students' ability to perform on standardized tests rather than tailoring it straight to them.
There's a section on an administrator's copy of the instructions for the SATs that tells he or she to do in case a student vomits on the test. Do you think the standardized test causes severe stress to students?
I'm sure some students experience a fair amount of anxiety and stress related to a high-stakes test like the SAT. Again, that's part of our job, is to make sure that we prepare students. Students vary. Some students get very nervous before athletic events. Some students get nervous before going into a dance. Some students get nervous before tests. Others don't. Our job is to make sure that we prepare students well so that they are able to perform at the very best of their ability. We aren't always going to be able to remove nerves, but we can limit that through preparation.
Statement made saying the multiple choice format on standardized tests is an inadequate assessment tool. It encourages a simplistic way of thinking in which there are only right and wrong answers, which doesn't apply in the real-world situations. Can I have your opinion on that statement?
Depends on the multiple choice test. I've taken multiple choice tests that are very simplistic, just plain memorization, regurgitation of facts. I would agree with the statement from that end. I've also taken some very challenging, thought-provoking multiple choice tests where I had to critically evaluate every word in the question and determine which one was the best answer, when maybe two or three of them had portions of them that were correct. So from that level, I think it depends on how the question is written and what the expectation is.
Do you agree that America is facing a creative crisis because standardized testing and rote learning dumb down curricula and jeopardize the country's economic future? Do you fear that the creative students are being neglected?
Thankfully, no. Particularly not here. And I've been fortunate enough to work in 3 high schools that value the arts and creativity. And I think it's one of the beautiful things about working in a comprehensive public high school is that we still continue to offer opportunities for students to pursue things like art, music, wood shop, technical drafting, electronics, intro to engineering. These types of courses, computer applications, these are avenues for students to be able to explore interests that they have and to see whether or not those are areas that they want to pursue in college.
It has been said that using test scores to reward and punish teachers in schools encourages them to cheat the system for their own gain. What are your thoughts on this?
Unfortunately, some folks have, so I can't really refute that. All I have to do is a quick Google search to look on the internet for a host of teachers and administrators that have cheated on high-stakes tests in order to get better scores. So I can't really refute that at all because it does happen. Unfortunately, that's part of the downside to having these high-stakes tests with this federal legislation. The upside, though, is that there's an accountability piece there. That schools now are making sure that students across the nation are achieving more than they have in the past. Less students are being allowed to just drop out, are allowed to just remain in 9th grade, 10th grade, year after year after year, and without progressing or learning. So I think that there's an expectation now and an accountability that is good, that's benefiting students.
Do you think the results of a standardized test is an accurate measure of teacher performance?
I think it could be. I don't know that it always is, because again, we started off this interview talking about that intangible piece of a student's desire. The flip side of that is also true, and there are students that, if you get a handful of them in a class that are really struggling and are not motivated, is that truly reflective? I think that's difficult to pin squarely on the teacher. Obviously, we want to make sure that teachers are working to deliver engaging, high-quality instruction. But just like we would acknowledge that there are those highly motivated kids that will achieve regardless of what's going on, we also have students at the other end of the spectrum across the nation. And so to set up a system that is going to only reward the top or only demean the bottom is a difficult one to support. But I do think that standardized tests offer a level of accountability that shows, and one of the things that we're looking at right now is the PVAS system, the Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System, that shows students' growth over time. That I actually think is a fairly good measure because it does show that as a student you scored at one level and then were able to move year after year. And if you aren't showing growth, then I think that that's a conversation that is something that we need to look at.
Are Downtown West teachers rewarded for high test scores?
No. It's currently not a piece of how we evaluate and reward teachers. With that being said, it is a part of the new Pennsylvania state evaluation system. The state has a system set up where you have to have 3 years data to be able to average together to collect on for a portion of the teacher's evaluation. So we're actually in the first year of that, and so over the next 3 years in the Keystone tested areas, we'll be looking at collecting that data, and then being able, that will ultimately after 3 years be added in as part of their evaluation. But as far as rewards or demerits, it's a small portion of what will go into their overall evaluation, but we're not talking about anything beyond that.
Il y a du truc.